The ground trembles with silence. It has trembled this way for 1,000 years. And yet, when the first light of the spring equinox breaks across the eastern horizon of the Yucatán Peninsula, something extraordinary happens. A diagonal shadow, sharp as a blade, begins its slow descent along the northern staircase of a pyramid that should not exist. A pyramid too precise, too deliberate, too mathematically perfect to have been built by any civilization that history once dismissed as primitive. The shadow moves. It undulates. It forms the body of a serpent. And at its base, carved in stone, the great feathered head of Kukulkan waits to receive it. This is not coincidence. This is not accident. This is engineering so advanced, so intentional, so breathtakingly accurate that it staggers the modern mind into silence. This is Chichén Itzá. And the year is approximately 950 of the Common Era. At the height of its power, Chichén Itzá was not merely a city. It was a statement. It was a declaration made in limestone and labor, in geometry and godhood, in the precise alignment of stone corridors and celestial bodies. Spread across nearly 5 square kilometers of northern Yucatán, this was one of the largest and most influential urban centers of the entire Maya world. A place where politics, religion, astronomy, and architecture did not exist as separate disciplines, but fused into a single, overwhelming act of construction. Every building here was a message. Every plaza, every pyramid, every carved column carried meaning that the engineers who raised them understood completely, and that took the modern world centuries to begin to decode. To understand what the builders of Chichén Itzá achieved, one must first understand the landscape they inherited. The northern Yucatán is not a forgiving terrain. It is a vast, flat shelf of porous limestone sitting atop a labyrinth of underground rivers and caverns. There are no mountains here. There are no rivers flowing above the surface. Rainfall, when it comes, disappears quickly through the fractured rock beneath the soil. What the Maya found here was a land of extremes, punishing dry seasons followed by torrential rains. And yet, they did not retreat from it. They mastered it. They looked at this flat, waterless, stone-filled landscape and saw not limitation, but possibility. The very rock beneath their feet would become their building material, their temples, their pyramids, their causeways, and their city. The most iconic structure at Chichén Itzá is also one of the most precisely engineered buildings in the history of the ancient world. El Castillo, known formally as the Pyramid of Kukulkan, rises 24 meters from the plaza floor, a stepped pyramid of 9 platforms terminating in a flat-topped temple. But its dimensions are not arbitrary. Each of the pyramid's 4 staircases contains 91 steps. Multiply that number by 4. Add the single platform at the summit, and the result is 365, the exact number of days in the solar year. The pyramid is, in the most literal sense, a calendar made of stone. Its builders did not simply track time, they encoded it into architecture, transforming an abstract numerical system into a physical monument that could be read, felt, and witnessed by anyone standing at its base. The orientation of El Castillo is equally deliberate. The pyramid was aligned with extraordinary care relative to the movement of the sun across the sky over the course of the year. During the spring and autumn equinoxes, the northwestern corner of the pyramid casts a precisely calculated series of triangular shadows along the balustrade of the northern staircase. As the sun moves across the afternoon sky on those 2 days each year, 7 interlocking triangles of light and shadow appear and then fade along the stone railing, creating the unmistakable visual impression of a great serpent descending from the heavens toward the earth. The carved serpent head at the base of the staircase anchors the illusion. Together, light and stone produce an event that thousands gathered to witness in the 10th century, just as thousands gather today. The Maya did not simply build a pyramid, they built a theatrical instrument of cosmic scale. What made this kind of precision possible was not magic. It was knowledge, accumulated, refined, and applied across generations with a discipline that rivals any scientific tradition. Maya astronomers had been observing the sky for centuries before Chichén Itzá reached its peak. They tracked the movements of the sun, the moon, Venus and the stars with a dedication that produced calendrical systems of extraordinary accuracy. Their solar calendar, the Hab, consisted of 18 months of 20 days each, plus 5 additional days at the year's end. Their ritual calendar, the Tzolk'in, and ran its own parallel cycle of 260 days. These two systems interlocked in a grand cycle of 52 years, and it was this deep understanding of celestial time that gave Maya architects the knowledge to orient their buildings, align their doorways, and position their windows so that specific astronomical events would be framed and celebrated by the structures themselves. This astronomical intelligence was not confined to El Castillo. On the eastern edge of the main ceremonial precinct at Chichén Itzá stands a building that looks unlike anything else in the Maya world. The Caracol, named for the spiral staircase coiling through its interior, is a circular tower rising from a broad rectangular platform. Its circular form alone makes it exceptional. The Maya typically built in right angles and sharp geometric planes. But the Caracol was built for a specific purpose that required its unusual shape. Its windows and doorways were positioned to frame the northernmost and southernmost positions of Venus on the horizon, the planet that the Maya associated with war, sacrifice, and the great feathered serpent Kukulkan himself. The diagonal of the platform aligns with the setting point of Venus at its maximum southern declination. The building is, in essence, an ancient observatory, and its builders understood the sky well enough to encode that understanding in the placement of every stone. Beyond the Great Pyramid and the observatory, Chichén Itzá contained an entire urban ecosystem of engineered spaces, each designed to serve a specific function within the social, religious, and political life of the city. The Great Ball Court stretches 168 meters in length and 70 meters in width, making it the largest such court in all of Mesoamerica. Its long, parallel walls rise 8 meters from the playing floor, and along their faces are carved bas-relief panels depicting scenes of the ritual game and its ultimate sacrificial conclusion. The acoustics of the court are remarkable. A whisper spoken at one end can be heard at the other with startling clarity, an effect so precise that scholars have debated whether it was intentional or the accidental result of the geometry. Given what the Maya demonstrated in virtually every other aspect of their construction, the idea that this acoustic phenomenon was accidental seems increasingly difficult to accept. The engineering of public space at Chichén Itzá extended well beyond individual monuments. The city's architects understood that architecture was not only about buildings, it was about the movement of people through space, the manipulation of sightlines, the orchestration of approach and arrival. The sacred cenote, a natural sinkhole roughly 60 meters in diameter, sits at the end of a raised causeway 300 meters long extending northward from the main plaza. This causeway, called a sac bay in Maya, was not a simple path. It was a formal processional way, elevated above the surrounding ground, plastered white so that it gleamed in the sunlight and glowed under the moon. Walking the sac bay toward the cenote, the pilgrim or priest moved through a carefully designed experience of anticipation, elevation, and arrival. The destination was sacred, but the journey itself was engineered. The sac bay system was one of the great infrastructural achievements of the Maya world, and Chichén Itzá participated in a regional network of these raised roads that connected cities, ceremonial centers, and trading hubs across the Yucatan. Some of these causeways ran for dozens of kilometers through the jungle, straight as surveyors' lines elevated above the forest floor on beds of rubble and lime plaster. They required organized labor on a significant scale, consistent engineering standards across vast distances, and a centralized administrative will capable of directing both. They were not primitive tracks through the wilderness. They were infrastructure, deliberate, maintained, and integral to the political and economic functioning of the Maya world. Water was, in the dry northern Yucatan, the most precious of all resources, and the engineers of Chichén Itzá approached the challenge of water management with the same precision they brought to pyramid construction. The natural sinkholes of the region, the cenotes, were the primary source of fresh water, but they were not sufficient on their own for a city of Chichén Itzá's scale. The Maya supplemented them with an extensive system of artificial reservoirs called chultuns, some carved directly into the bedrock, lined with waterproof plaster and capable of storing thousands of liters through the dry season. The plazas themselves were designed as catchment systems, their carefully sloped surfaces directing rainwater toward channels and cisterns hidden beneath the paving. Nothing was wasted. The city drank from its own architecture. The materials that made all of this possible were found in extraordinary abundance in the Yucatan itself. The limestone shelf that underlies the entire peninsula provided a building stone that could be quarried in large blocks, carved with precision using stone and obsidian tools, and then treated with lime plaster that hardened to a finish as smooth and durable as concrete. This plaster, called sascab, was produced by burning limestone and mixing the result with water, a chemical process the Maya understood and controlled with great skill. It was applied to exterior surfaces to protect the stone beneath from moisture and erosion, and polished to a brilliant white that made the pyramids and temples of Chichén Itzá visible from enormous distances across the flat plain. In the tropical sunlight, a plastered Maya pyramid did not simply stand in the landscape, it blazed. Inside the temples and palaces, the Maya solved one of the fundamental challenges of stone construction with a technique known as the corbelled vault. Unlike the true arch, which distributes weight laterally across a curved span, the corbelled vault achieves its span by stepping successive courses of stone inward from both sides until they meet, or nearly meet, at the top. The result is a ceiling that looks almost Gothic in its narrowness and height, a triangular or trapezoidal cross-section that channels weight efficiently downward through the thick walls below. The chambers created by corbelled vaults are typically long and narrow, and the walls that support them must be massive. In many Maya structures, the wall mass significantly outweighs the interior space it encloses. But within these constraints, Maya architects created rooms of extraordinary spatial drama, dim, cool, heavy with incense smoke and the weight of carved stone, spaces designed not for comfort, but for awe. Chichén Itzá's Temple of the Warriors offers perhaps the most visually overwhelming synthesis of all these architectural principles. It rises in broad stepped platforms to a summit temple, its exterior walls covered in carved reliefs of warriors, jaguars, eagles, and the feathered serpent. Before its grand entrance, a forest of square columns, hundreds of them carved with figures and symbols, once supported a great roof or canopy that has since collapsed, but whose existence transformed the space in front of the temple into a colonnaded hall of monumental proportions. At the summit temple's threshold sits the famous Chak Mul figure, the reclining stone messenger with his characteristic upturned face and the offering bowl resting on his stomach, positioned so that he faces directly into the interior darkness of the temple beyond. The approach to this building, up its steep staircase, past the columns, past the Chak Mul, into the shadowed sanctuary at the top, was not an architectural experience. It was a ritual one. The building made the ritual possible. The architecture was the ceremony. Every stone at Chichén Itzá was placed by human hands. There were no draft animals in the Maya world, no wheeled carts, no iron tools. The pyramids were built by workers who quarried stone with stone, moved it on wooden sledges and human backs, fitted it with copper and obsidian tools, and lifted it into position through systems of ramps, leverage, and organized labor on a scale that required both sophisticated engineering knowledge and extraordinary social coordination. The logistical achievement alone, feeding, directing, and organizing the thousands of workers necessary to raise a pyramid like El Castillo, implies a degree of administrative sophistication that should silence any lingering doubt about the complexity of Maya civilization. And yet complexity alone does not explain what the builders of Chichén Itzá achieved. Complexity can produce efficiency. It takes something else, something closer to genius, to produce beauty. The Maya possessed both. They built cities that worked, that managed water and organized people, and connected to distant trading networks, and stood for centuries in a demanding tropical environment. But they also built cities that meant something, cities where every proportion, every alignment, every carved surface contributed to an experience of space that was deliberately, consciously, magnificently designed to overwhelm the human spirit. They built for gods and for the future, and they built as if both were watching. Standing today in the great plaza of Chichén Itzá, With El Castillo rising against the blue Yucatan sky and the shadows beginning their slow descent along the northern staircase, it is easy to feel what the builders intended. Not the weight of stone, not the mathematics of calendars, not the logistics of labor. What one feels standing there is the same thing a Maya pilgrim standing in that same plaza more than 1,000 years ago would have felt. The presence of something larger than oneself, something that was thought through and built and endures. The Maya engineers did not simply construct a city, they constructed a world, and they built it well enough that it still holds.